It's Friday night, which means it's time for another episode of the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast. I'm Casey.
And I'm Ashli. Last time we discussed the unaired Hey Arnold pilot.
Yeah, once again, I'm giving you an error in our intro, so I didn't even realize. It wasn't really unaired. It had aired selectively, and, you know what, Ashli? It's 9 days after it apparently was released on DVD.
Oh, yeah. Did we ever get any follow-up on that? Did we ever, dig in to see
I'm
what the heck that was
Googling
about?
right now. There's nothing. I'll sort it by news. Okay, there's a new article from November 24th. Hey Arnold, searching and Air Force on one disc. Oh, I see. So they did release, Paramount and Nickelodeon released the Hey Arnold, the Ultimate Collection.
Oh.
It's the complete TV series, 2 movies, and then it says, and bonus content. And then there's a sticker that I assume says with French subtitles of the Hey Arnold film. Okay, so I guess it came out with this DVD. Oh, and it includes the Jungle movie, so that's like all they really added to it.
I was kind of wondering, I was like, I don't know, but like how many people are currently looking for a new version of the Hey Arnold series on DVD, right? Like,
well,
it's already a purchasable product. I guess.
To be fair, it's really hard to watch the Jungle movie, so I guess they're giving you this, you know?
Yeah, but why not just sell that separate?
Yeah, that's true.
Because Hey Arnold is on Hulu, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so it's pretty accessible if you want it. Anyways.
That's true. It also includes, which I sent you the link when I was digging on Hey Arnold, these claymation shorts from 1988. It has one of them, which was the first ever appearance of Arnold, called Arnold Escapes from Church, and it's like Harold's the bully and Helga is the like weird love interest, and that's it. Like, it's 3 characters.
That's kind of fascinating too.
Yeah, we gotta watch those. They're really short. I haven't watched it yet.
They're like minutes. I don't know if I ever actually watched them, but I do know back in my, I want to say high school obsession with Hey Arnold, I dug deep into that, so.
Also, this says, sorry, we'll get back on track in a second, but it says that Julia Louis-Dreyfus was in a Hey Arnold. Oh, she was Miss Felter. That's crazy.
Miss Felter.
In Crush on Teacher. I think Ray and I did that without you because it was a substitute teacher episode.
Oh.
But yeah, it's the episode where Arnold has a crush on the sub, and it's really uncomfortable, and he thinks that, and her fiance's name is Arnold, and Gerald hears her talking about him romantically, and they think it's about Arnold. It's a really uncomfortable episode, but oh my god, that's Julia Louis-Dreyfus. That's crazy.
Wild. Well,
anyway, that makes me so happy. Go Cats. She is a fellow Northwestern person.
Wow, I never would have guessed that. That is wild. Yeah. Anyways.
Actually, leading perfectly into our Twitter poll, no sarcasm for once, do you want a Hey Arnold revival? And 72% of you said yes, 28% of you said no, and a few of you commented saying, like, while you love the show, you don't feel the need for them to milk it, and I tend to agree. I think, the Jungle movie wrapped things up well enough for me, but I trust Craig Bartlett. If he were in charge, I'd say go ahead, but if for any reason he didn't want to do it, I wouldn't trust them to do it.
Right, yeah, it would definitely need to be originals included in there, and yeah, it's I don't necessarily need there to be one, but don't get me wrong, I would 100% watch it if there were. I'm not saying I'm above a Hey Arnold revival, but I do feel like it's a mostly complete story. I think we kind of know where Arnold's at with most of his life, and I'm not dying to get filled in anymore on it personally.
Right, but like you said, the Patakis green-lighted immediately.
Man. I would watch that so hard.
It would get like 10 viewers a week, you know? I feel like we're the only ones who really want it.
I want it more than this world knows. It... Even if I wish there was even just like an unaired pilot of that to like give me an idea of what the show would have been. Alas. But moving forward, this week we are talking about the 10th episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, getting back to our watch through here. I know it's a little bit late for you guys, but we're still getting it done.
Yeah, we're in the double digits now, finally. And thanks for bearing with us. We are back and better than ever. We just had a brief hiatus, but we're back in your feed, as you can obviously tell. Follow us on Twitter at FNN_podcast and Facebook.com/FNN Podcast. Review us on Apple Podcasts so others can find the show. And make sure to check out our YouTube page as well. And please leave comments there. We love hearing from you all.
And with that, thanks so much for tuning in. Now let's get started.
From the Nicktoons Animation Studio in Hollywood. Hollywood.
All right, this episode, as we said, is the 10th episode of Book 1, Water. It's called Jet, and it originally aired on May 6th, 2005.
And in this one, a band of guerrilla fighters led by the rogue Jet rescue Aang, Katara, and Sokka from a small group of Fire Nation soldiers. Jet invites the team back to the Freedom Fighters' hideout, where the group plots out its attacks. Jet and Katara form an instant bond, but Sokka has suspicions about Jet, which leads the young rebel to tempt Sokka with missions. His plan fails, however, with Sokka increasingly concerned about Jet's motives and true objectives. Aang and Katara decide to help Jet in his efforts to, quote-unquote, save a nearby Earth Kingdom town, but Jet's real intent is to drown the village, sacrificing the lives of innocent civilians to destroy the Fire Nation garrison there. However, Sokka manages to evacuate the city, Earth and Fire citizens alike, in time to avoid Jet's plot.
Yeah, it's a real heavy one. It instantly calls to mind questions of war, like the nuclear bombs in Japan, or like any situation where a utilitarian leader would say the ends justify the means, which Jet here does, whereas a more, I don't even know what the right word is, a more humanistic, a more, frankly, empathetic person would say we have to save even the bad people so that innocent people don't die.
Yeah, it really is an interesting moral dilemma here. And it's also, it's the first time that we're seeing somebody who is, you know, on the side of the quote-unquote good guys, right, the rebels against the Fire Nation, who maybe is crossing the line a little bit too much, right? This is the first time that we're seeing that sort of flavor of rebellion there.
Yeah. No, and it's an interesting side of the world where it's just really, at the beginning of the episode, really refreshing to know that other people are in this resistance, that at times it feels like Aang and his friends are alone in this fight, but even to see another band of these 5 weirdos working together is comforting to them.
Absolutely. I do want to back up a little bit. It's not really mentioned in this synopsis here, but we do need to talk about how at the very beginning, we have Sokka getting straight up roasted by Katara, and it's beautiful.
It's so funny.
He's like, well, my instincts tell me that I that we should walk, that we shouldn't be on the flying bison.
And he's like, I'm the leader, which causes a little argument, she says, well, maybe Aang's the leader. And he's like, Aang's still a kid, in which they are too,
Right. And then she goes on with I'll bet you wouldn't be so bossy if you've kissed a girl. And he's like, I've kissed a girl. And then she responds back with, Gran? I've met Gran.
Yeah, it's so good, and the voice acting is excellent. You can just, feel the burn.
And then shortly thereafter, they're walking per Sokka's instincts, and it's a miserable time. Their feet are sore, and I forgot exactly what the line is, but Katara says something about, oh, you know when we're gonna get there? Maybe you can ask Sokka's instincts. And it's just, like, drilling into him.
Dripping with sarcasm. Yeah, she's really going for the kill this episode, but Sokka kind of has it coming for doing this whole I'm the macho leader thing, even though he's the only one who can't bend.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he does have it coming, and it's, you know, I was kind of with him to an extent. I was like, well, you know, to be fair, being on a giant flying bison probably does make them a little easier to find, right? But, they also have a bad tendency of spreading word around too fast, and there's other things that make them continuously get caught. And in this case, them being on foot ends up being for the worse, because they immediately walk into a Fire Nation, just like a little, I don't even know what you call it, but some small Fire Nation hideout situation there.
Oh yeah, so first they encounter the Fire Nation. They're trapped. They try bending, but very quickly, there's what's the first thing that happens? I can't remember. Like, it's like a boomerang or something, right? Comes in.
Yeah, something like that.
And it's Jet and his gang of sort of Robin Hood-like knaves who rescue them, and it's exciting to see this. Like we were saying, this. Fellow resistors to the Fire Nation, and they are able to save Sokka and Aang and Katara, and, you know, Jet is, let's just say it, Jet's hot, and Katara is instantly just like, oh my god, who is this guy? And Sokka's suspicious, and Aang is just relieved, basically, and it's an interesting introduction because they're kind of brought in as these swashbuckling heroes, but that takes a turn later in the episode.
Yeah, and I mean, immediately we feel like, oh, look, there's other people that are on the same side, and we find out, too, that Jet's parents were also killed by the Fire Nation, so there's this sort of bond there, too, beyond just the, raw physical attraction. There's this sort of understanding, at least at the beginning, where it feels like, well, they've both gone through the same thing, so they understand where the other is coming from. And you know, I will say, I don't agree with Jet, but it is understandable that he's a very angry person, right? Like, he's however old he is at the time, and his parents were killed by these other people, and it is understandable to have a lot of, pent-up anger towards that group. Like, again, still questionable, but I do kind of see where he's coming from.
Yeah, me too. He's like, if the parallels between him and Sokka and between him and Katara are very interesting, and he calls on them a lot. He'll say, you're wrong, like, imagine what the Fire Nation did to your parents and use that. But Sokka and Katara are noble and clear-headed enough to know what helps their cause and what doesn't. And while you can certainly understand where Jet's coming from, it's more about him, and it's about him getting revenge than it is about any sort of greater good.
Oh, absolutely. And I think part of him still thinks that he's on the side of good without really recognizing how caught up in this revenge scheme he really is, right? And he does kind of have this awareness, though, right? So he goes out of his way to not give the full reasons for his actions to Aang and Katara. So he can kind of tell, he's like, oh, we just need water to help us put out the fires or something. I forget the exact explanation.
Yeah, I will say you can feel the twist coming. Avatar
right.
Isn't formulaic, really, except for in terms of the hero's journey, but episode per episode it's pretty fresh. But one of the few formulas they do use is someone new is introduced and they're either seen as really good or really bad, and then by the end of the episode you're thinking the opposite.
Yeah, and again, you can kind of feel that he's being shady, and the moment that, like, first starts to really break things down is they're sort of hiding out in the forest waiting for Fire Nation people to come through, and Sokka's all on board. He's like, yep, let's scout out for Fire Nation people, and they end up attacking this old man who is from the Fire Nation. But he's still a civilian, and he's an old man. He's, seemingly not in any interest to harm anyone, and he's just kind of there, and, it doesn't feel right. Right? They, steal everything off his back, and it just doesn't feel appropriate somehow.
Yeah, and he hasn't done anything wrong in the moment, the old man. He is just walking through the woods, and he's being a firebender. Is that a crime in itself? I don't know.
Yeah, and again, I kind of feel that the anger towards, and again, not really rational, but, he's got a lot of pent-up anger towards the entirety of the Fire Nation, right, because of what they've been allowed to do, and it is very plausible that this old man at one point was supporting the Fire Nation, right, and potentially he's done something in the past, but we don't even know that, right?
He was probably a soldier, just given what seems like the world where the men go and fight.
Right.
He probably was.
But they don't know that for 100% certain,
yeah.
And even if they did, right, I mean, there's no reason for them to be as vicious as they are, and Sokka kind of stands up to the old man and is like, let him go, he's just a man, he's just passing through, he's just living, right? And then we get this follow-up conversation where, first off, Sokka goes back to Aang and Katara and is like, hey, Jet just made us steal all these things from this old man, and then Katara... I will say Katara is a little bit faulted here throughout this episode in that she is so trusting of Jet.
Yeah,
she was like, no, he wouldn't do that. That's not Jet. Jet's not like that. And I'm like, you've known this guy for how long?
Yep. He's manipulative. He's smooth, and he kind of knows how to win everybody over. He knows what language to speak to make them comfortable. With Katara, it's a little bit of flirting. With Sokka, it's strategy, and he doesn't interact much with Aang at all individually, but Aang kind of fades to the background this episode, which is really interesting.
He does throw out, so again, he has them sort of, Aang and Katara help out, with these geysers, and he does say the line, something along the lines of, well, I know that the Avatar can get this done. So he does play a little bit into that.
Yeah, you're right. He does try to, appeal to Aang's ego in a way, and it works.
Yeah, and again, he does all of this knowing that he needs to leave out these details, right? He recognizes that these people are seeing things differently, but he really does think that he's in the right, and he is a shady kind of character, but we also get this moment, though, where he's like, well, when he's talking about the old man, and he's like, well, he had this poison knife with him. He was trying to kill us. He was an assassin sent to kill me specifically, and he thanks Sokka for saving his life. And it kind of puts you in this weird spot where, you're pretty sure that he's making this up, but, it's not explicitly stated one way or the other.
Yeah, it isn't, and it's pretty unsettling, because it's unsettling either way. Either someone was trying to kill him, or they're with just a pathological liar.
Yeah, and given his actions, part of me is inclined to be he's making this up, but another part of me is I don't know, he could have, I don't know.
It makes sense that someone would be after Jet after how much he's disturbed the local Fire Nation.
And it also makes sense that maybe you'd want to send somebody who's, seemingly harmless, right?
It's why old people are used to smuggle drugs all the time.
Right, they're seemingly non-problematic, so it does make sense that they'd be like, well, let's send this old man, just make him look innocent, and they know Jet's around. So it's hard to say, and I think it's kind of intentionally a little ambiguous.
Right. And the thing with the old man, it's the inverse of the, I don't know if it's quite a trope, but the plot point I've seen in a few things where it's you encounter a baby of your worst enemies in the world, and it's what do you save the baby? Do you kill it? Do you raise it? The question of should it be punished for what it could become? And with the old man, it's well, should he be punished for something he might have done? It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, it is. And again, we're kind of left in this place where do we take Jet's word? Do we think that because he's lied to them about something that he's lying all the time? It's hard to say. Regardless, the actions that they took maybe weren't necessarily great. And Sokka does say, like, I didn't see a knife on him, but it's still possible that he missed it, right? That he wasn't looking for it, or that it was in his belongings elsewhere.
Right.
But he definitely does lie to them about this whole water situation, and he is planning on just wiping out an entire town, which is pretty horrifying.
To kill a couple of firebenders.
Yeah, and again, a lot of even of the Fire Nation, they're mostly civilians there, right? Like these aren't, for the most part, people in war, right?
That's true, although I suppose if they're living there, they are occupying in a way,
right? Yeah, but not all of them, right? Like, I don't know. And even so many innocent earthbenders have to get killed in order to get to it. So
yeah, no, and we keep presenting these things as moral quandaries. Let me just say, from my point of view, there is no moral quandary. There is, if you find a baby of a Nazi, you don't kill the baby.
Yeah.
If you have the choice between killing a couple evil people but many innocents are killed, you don't do it. So for me, this is not a moral quandary, but, in media and for many, I think it is. So
and I think the other thing, too, is that this wouldn't even be that big of a win for them, right? Not saying that it would outweigh it otherwise, but he'd be killing a bunch of innocent people to kill minor players in this war, right? Like, it's not like he's doing this and then the Fire King is gone, like
this would not impact Fire Lord Ozai
or Fire Lord,
at
sorry.
all.
It would be such a small impact that it wouldn't even do anything. It's really more if he just wants to punish the Fire Nation in this small way that he can.
Yeah,
he's so caught up in it.
His mind is warped for revenge, and that's sad. It's really sad that he had to go through that trauma, and the Fire Nation is messed up and horrible. We know that, but the way to do it, I think, would be to team up and join Team Avatar, but as we see, he doesn't do that. He makes his choice, and Sokka is able to really save the day in this episode, and he evacuates everyone, and this is really, it starts off with him being, like, kind of a knob, but by the end of the episode, he has saved the day and proven that, for once, his instincts were right.
Yeah, they kind of ask him, they're like, well, why did you go to the village rather than just trying to, go to the dam itself and trying to stop that? And he was like, sometimes my instincts are right. And then there's a really cute ending, too. It's another one of those riding off into the sunset kind of deals where, I forget if it's Aang or Katara, but one of them is like, but you do know that you're flying in the directly wrong direction here. And he's like, and sometimes my instincts are wrong. And it's a cute little play on it all.
Yeah, and it shows humility from Sokka, which we don't see often, so that's funny. And yeah, it is, Sokka's instincts are sort of doubly right, where he said they should have walked, and they didn't, and they almost got killed by Fire Nation people. Although, if they hadn't walked, presumably Jet would have gone through with his plan, and lots of innocent people would have died, so it's kind of a good thing.
Yeah, and, presumably, although it was useful for him to have the water bending, if he was this, attached to the idea, he would have found a way to do it without their help, I'm certain. Yeah. And I do think there's at least some amount of eye-opening here for Katara, too, that she realizes that maybe, people aren't always immediately what they seem, that she was so trusting of him so immediately and sees this sort of darker side. And, it's another one of those moments where, and it's really a big part of why we love the show, is that no one character is always right. There's not the one character that is the moral good that never messes up throughout the entire series. That they are, human in a lot of ways. That she can make mistakes, and that Sokka is not just always the bumbling idiot. He can have moments of really great wisdom. So I feel like this episode kind of plays on that pretty well.
It does. They're built like a good sports team where, it's like in baseball specifically, players are going to slump, and so you need a team that can pick each other up when someone does, and that's just what Team Avatar does. And I keep using Team Avatar. I guess that's a spoiler in a way. They haven't officially branded themselves that yet, but I think it's so obvious that, like, whatever.
The name, I don't think, is the major plot point of the series as a whole.
No. But yeah, they're such a great team, the three of them, and they keep each other in check. So, yeah, it's a great episode. Jet is a fascinating character, and one that the fan base has particularly clung on to, specifically the fan art creating fan base. It's a little much, I will say, for a character who's not in much of the show, but he certainly has fascinated fans of this show since the very beginning.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's, again, he's a different flavor of character than what we've seen thus far. He's sort of morally ambiguous, again, sort of up to you how ambiguous that is, but he's at least on the same quote-unquote side as Team Avatar, but maybe not really there. So, do you have anything else to add?
No, why don't we go to your segment?
Let's do it. Alright guys, so my segment this week is pretty short, and it comes from me sort of scrolling around the Avatar wiki, and I'm on Jet's page here, trying to dig into some things, and I noticed that in his info, it's listed that he is born in 83 AG, and I was wondering, well, what the heck is AG? And it's actually and I haven't dug into exactly where it started, but it's a fan-created sort of timeline where they base it on the Air Nomad genocide. So before the Air Nomad genocide is BG, and after is AG. And I just thought it was really cool that people have managed to put together this timeline, and there's a whole bunch of bits and pieces of things, including that Aang emerges from the iceberg in late 99 AG. And, you know, there's just a lot of interesting info here. There's a lot of events that I don't want to spoil for you guys yet, but I did think it was just cool that they managed to build this all out.
Yeah, this is a great idea, and if you have finished the show, I highly recommend checking out the timeline itself. There's a few versions of it, and if you finished Korra too, they integrate that, because we learn more about the past from the present of the show. Like, the timeline of the show is always moving forward, but we get flashbacks that enlighten us. And I imagine the timeline pulls from things like the, not the comics, what are they called? Graphic novels?
Yeah.
I think. And,
I would imagine.
I imagine they pull from that world, but there's not a ton of, it's not like George R.R. Martin, there's not a ton of lore, so it's cool what people have been able to construct just from the show, really.
Yeah, and again, this isn't any sort of years that are strictly mentioned within the show, and they've sort of made it more, I guess, palatable and time-framed it around this event, and I think it's cool, and I'm kind of interested to see, like, where they made the decision of, you know, the Air Nomad deaths being the sort of, you know, 0 point there, but it's, yeah, really fascinating read. Definitely recommend digging further into it. And then if we ever do reach anything where we reference things in AG as we continue on through our show, now you guys know what we're getting at.
And I have a feeling we will now.
Yeah, now that we have a frame for it.
Exactly. All right, well, thank you, Ashley. Let's head to that conclusion. All right, so our Twitter poll this week is, do you think Jet lied about the old man and his knife and being sent to kill Jet? Reminder that Sokka claims that he never sees a knife, but Jet gets it from somewhere. So just a quick yes or no on that one.
Yeah, and again, I think it leaves it ambiguous enough that I could see arguments for either way, so I'm interested to see what you guys think. We're actually going to be doing a double release this week. We are going to be covering a SpongeBob episode due to the unfortunate passing of its creator. And so we thought that it would be a good way to sort of honor the show by going back to one of the episodes that he wrote.
Yeah, this really bummed us out all week. Steven Hillenburg is obviously one of the greats of Nickelodeon and of animation all time. He created what I think will be seen as the Mickey Mouse, the Looney Tunes, the Scooby Doo of this era. I think it will be one of the most iconic cartoons of all time, and it certainly is in the current year. I wonder what it will look like in 100 years, but I'll bet SpongeBob will still be relevant in some way. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, I agree. It's an ingrained part of our culture. It's an amazing masterpiece of a show, and Bubble Stand is the episode that we'll be digging into, and it captures so many amazing things here. So, again, sad that we have to sort of, mourn the loss of this man, but it is a good opportunity for us to look back at what he created and really recognize, again, it's a masterpiece. It really is. A lot of people might think that it's just a comedy, right? That it's just a funny, stupid show, but it is so well done, and there's so many great moments in there. So, looking forward to getting on that, and you guys will see that right after this one in your feed.
Exactly. So looking forward to that. We got our social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.
And with that, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you not next week, right now.